Cool. We're good. All right. Welcome back, everyone. We had a quick break on our Bionicle lesson lecture time. We have a new student in the class. This is Chris. And he's got homework. He'll have to catch back up on everything else we talked about before. But we'll go ahead and do a quick recap just to summarize everything we've gotten to. Bionicle is a series by Lego. It was made in 2001. Last time we got up to about the beginning of 2003, right up at Free the Queens of the Bohrok-Kal. Everything up to that most point, remember, is just Toa hero warriors appear on an island. They have they're very amnesiac, don't really understand, have to collect all these masks to get a even better golden mask that gives them ability. Their main mission is to defeat this evil Makuta guy and awaken the great spirit Matanui. After they beat him to, pieces into a peace whirlwind of flying body parts, they escape, and then the Bohrok show up, which we did get Bohrok this time for a visual reference. So they roll up into a ball, and they also unfurl out here, and they just yeet! Yeah! That's all they do, and they're really good at knocking the masks off of the toe, which as far as the game element was. And then to actually get the Krana out of the plate on the top there, just boom, it just shoots out. So the Toa go and they defeat the Bohrok swarms, more or less. They find a cavern where the Bohrok nest is, and they find the Bohrok queens. The Barag, they use giant suits, the Exo-Toa, which are just giant mech suits for mechs. I mean, they're robots piloting robots at that point. And defeat the Bohrok queens, fall into energized protodermis, which turns them into these guys right here. The Toa Nuva. They've got sick silver armor, except for Pohatu here, just because it's missing, because whatever. We don't have Kopaka Nuva up here either, but never mind that.
Someone didn't come prepared.
I know, I'm never prepared. So picking up at the beginning, kind of where we were picking up last, at the beginning of 2003 with Free the Queens, in the book Makuta's Revenge, where Toa Tahu, after all the Toa get up out of the underground lair, where they've been imprisoned now, the Toa Nuva all kind of are pretty stoked about their big win and their new abilities, and they immediately start duking it out with each other, just trying to see who's the strongest of them all, and just testing to see what their new elemental powers are and stuff. Once again, very quickly, Tahu Nuva and Kopaka Nuva are very quickly they're not just playing around. They're going for the gold. They're trying to hurt each other, and everyone's like, okay, stop. It is at this point, once again, that Kopaka Nuva, Tahu Nuva, specifically, are like, we are so strong now, we're more strong than we've ever been. We are more strong individually now with our Toa Nuva powers than we were as a team before. So once again, for the third time, we could just split off and do our own thing. Immediately, Pohatu Nuva is like, no, this is like, why can't we all just be best bro buds? That'd be cool. And Toa Gali Nuva is also, no, the power of, we're 6 heroes, 1 destiny, we gotta work together. And Toa Liwa's already flying away. He doesn't even stick around. So they all kind of go back to their own respective villages. Toa Tahu Nuva gets back to his village of Takoro and meets up with Taragavakama, the village leader again. And Taragavakama is like, oh man, we almost didn't recognize you. You look so different. Even though most of the pieces almost look exactly the same as the original Toa there. They just got little neat silvery bits. The masks change out a little bit there. Is like, yes, I am now not Tahu. You may now call me Tahu Nuva, and you will address me as such, because that's the thing. So everyone's like, okay, Toa Tahu Nuva. So Toa Tahu Nuva goes up to Taragavakama and is like, hey, so how do you know? Like, this has kind of been weird. It's bothering all of us. It seems like you and the other Tarag are kind of hiding things because you knew about the masks that were just hidden, just ambiguously about, but you kind of knew exactly where they would be and what kind of trials they would face there. You knew about some of the Makuta's plans. You knew about the Bohrok being a thing. What's going on? And Taragavakama just kind of goes, Big heavy sigh. Hold on, let me stare into this fire for a bit more. One side note, Bohrok-Kal likes to stare into fires a lot. He just sees visions or something into them. And then relays that to everybody else. So Bohrok-Kal goes, all right, so listen. The time for knowing will come. And he's like, well, you already said that before. He's like, okay, well, I'm saying it again. But I'm going to give you this really, really important thing. Only use it if you absolutely have to. It gives him this mask that is unlike any other mask that has ever been seen. And up to this point, all the other masks completely cover the face. What he is giving them is the Kanohi Vahi, the Mask of Time, which it only covers up to the nose bridge, and then it flanges out, but the top is just completely exposed head. And so once again, we talked about before that there were generally 3 types of masks. There were powerless masks, noble masks, great masks, and a 4th category that is legendary masks that tamper with the fabric of reality. These are, the first one we're introduced to is the Kanohi Vahi Mask of Time. And so it's really, to break down what the powers of the Kanohi Vahi are, is that you get to control every facet of time. It's not you get to slow down time for you and somebody else, but not you. Or you can slow everybody down, or you can speed things up, or you can go back. No, it's literally every facet of time, which has the caveat of you have to have immense willpower and mental fortitude to even be able to try and comprehend that. Because if you use the mask and you lose concentration or you can't comprehend some facet within it, you just end up wiping everything out of existence. It is on that magnitude of powerful. So Bohrok-Kal goes, only use this if you absolutely need to, because it's a really, and once again, Totahu Nuvas goes, okay, that's really cool. Where did you get this? We couldn't have used this earlier? Because Totahu Nuvas, once again, really puffed up in the chest right now. He's really stoked on himself. And he's Bohrok-Kal says, look, the time for knowing will come. And at this moment, all of a sudden, there are screams and explosions in the village of Takoro. Totahu Nuva runs outside and goes, what is going on? And immediately starts seeing, explosions here and there, and it's just there's fire. And a Bohrok starts kind of running past. And Totahu Nuva is like, okay, we defeated the Bohrok. They are completely mechanical. We reprogrammed most of them. Why is this Bohrok running around? What's it doing? And over, by the way, one of the other Matoran is like, Totahu, remember that cool Nuva symbol thing that we told you about that's in your Toasuba? And Totahu Nuva says, no, I don't remember it all because I wasn't paying attention. He goes, okay, well, there's this new Nuva symbol thing. It just showed up in the village, and now it was at your Suva shrine, and we put it there, and it was kind of like a monument to you, but the Bohrok-Kal took it, and I tried to protect it, but I couldn't. And so Totahu Nuva is like, cool. Thank you, useless citizen. I will do my duty and reclaim my plaque thing. So he goes up to the Bohrok, which, interestingly, has some weird silver accents to it. It looks different. Now, this isn't the one that does show up for canon purposes, but it is just to show the difference between what the Bohrok and the Bohrok-Kal do. In the same way that the Toa Nuva got super cool silvery pieces, the Bohrok-Kal released in 2003 with silver, an extra silver plate on the head, different silver hands, and silver joint feet and these connector pieces here. And what's interesting noticing is that the Bohrok-Kal is not actually attacking anybody. It's not actually destroying anything either, which is very unlike the original Bohrok. Because the Bohrok were just going around and flattening everything out, destroying things, and trying to mask people in the face with their Krana. But the Bohrok-Kal is pretty much just not. It's just kind of, he took the Nuva symbol and he's just kind of walking out the gates. Totahu Nuva is like, halt there, villain, and suffer my wrath. And I think it's Tanakh is the name of it. Bohrok-Kal is there, and he just goes, hey, have you seen the Bohrok queens anywhere? And immediately everyone kind of freaks out, because the Bohrok before could not talk. They could not communicate. And here we have a Bohrok that can just very fluently is like, where are the Bohrok queens? I just need to know where they are. Let me know. I need to free the queens. That would be cool. Totaku Nuva says, no way. There's no way you're going to free the queens. One, I don't know what you're talking about. Two, who are you? How are you even talking? And so Tanaka was like, okay, well, since you guys aren't helpful, I'm just going to get out of here. Starts walking away. Totaku Nuva goes, no. We're fighting here. And immediately goes to shoot out some fire from his swords, and nothing comes out. Nothing comes out at all. So he tries again. Nothing. Still has no access to his elemental abilities. Just suddenly, what is going on? All the color in the mask of Totaku Nuva just completely drains and turns silver. It's a silver mask. Yes, Zach.
Just random question. Have you ever swung a fire sword and nothing come out? I'm just wondering if you can relate to that.
Yes. Once or twice. But I was not a Totaku Nuva at the time, and that was my critical error. So Totaku Nuva is immediately like, okay, what's going on here? And it kind of starts piecing it together, like, oh, wait, when we got our new super fancy Nuva powers, those Nuva symbols appeared. And now he's got the Nuva symbol, and I don't have it. I think my elemental powers may be related to this. And so he still tries to go in anywhere. Tanaka's like, okay, I'm just going to have to teach you a lesson. Down, boy. And just shoots out a torrent of electrical energy. And just zaps the absolute bejesus out of Totaku Nuva. Just zaps him to the ground and goes, all right, I'm off to go find the Bohrok Queens. Bye. And leaves. And everyone is like, what was that? And Tragopakama walks out. I was like, it's the Bohrok-Kal. And they're like, what did we just go over? How do you know all these things? How do you even know what a Bohrok-Kal is? And he's like, the time for knowing will come. Like, that's great. The time for knowing will come. The time for knowing was like 3 months ago. Tragopakama goes, okay, look. The Bohrok-Kal are an elite group of Bohrok that are a failsafe for for any reason the Bohrok Queens, the Balrog, get imprisoned or they can't communicate with the swarms. They're sent out as like a commando unit to go and free them or figure out what's going on. So Totaku Nuva was like, man, what? So what are we supposed to do? Tragopakama goes, oh, by the way, while you were gone also, and you got your super new Nuva symbols, your new Nuva powers, 5 new masks for each of you have shown up all around the island, and you need to go and find these new Nuva masks. And you absolutely bet your ass you could go and buy those at your local retailer and little randomized mask packs. But not only that, because once again, now we have the Nuva mask, we also have the Bohrok-Kal. They just reused all the same shapes for the Krana for the Bohrok-Kal and just changed the colors on them, made them a little metallic, and it was like, brand new! And it's like for reference, so at this point, we've had 2001, we get the Toa. 2002, we get the Bohrok. And at the back half of 2002, we got the Toa Nuva. It's like, okay, so these are kind of neat redesigns a little bit of the original Toa. And then immediately after that, we got the Bohrok-Kal, which look almost identical. Almost absolutely identical. Because I remember, when my mom showed up with these, the Bohrok-Kal, I guess it was me and my brother, I was like, didn't we just get these? I think, are these really that different? And so an important thing here also with the Bohrok-Kal coming out is they included these little miniature CD-ROMs in them. And before that, actually, with the original Bionicle, with the original Toa, they included these little mini CD-ROM discs that you could, put in. It was a really neat way to kind of get an idea of what the story was on a computer. And one of the other features on it was all the masks have a 3-digit code inside, and so you could put the mask thing, and then you could see CG rendered cutscenes of stuff they had made up, which is neat. Much like the same with the Bohrok-Kal, they released some little individual discs, and they all had the pattern of whatever they call them shields, the little hand things out here, and on them, and give more information on the Bohrok-Kal and stuff. So it's at this point that the Toa regroup because they've all had the same thing happen in their village, and they are all just kind of really, really frustrated and at each other's throats. Even Toagali is very much I friggin' told you guys. I told you if we went up separate ways, this is the exact same thing that will happen. Why don't you ever listen to me? And Totaku and Toakopaka are just doing their own thing, and everyone's just trying to okay, well, here's the deal. The Bohrok-Kal are running around looking for the queens. Good news is they don't seem to know where the queens are. The bad news is we don't really know where they are either, because the entire tunnel system just collapsed in on itself, and we don't have no idea where it could be. So right now, what's the game plan? Totahu is generally just, we go out there and we just kick their asses. Which everyone else just kind of goes, yeah, that sounds a good idea. Yeah, okay, that sounds good. This is not actually a good idea, because up until this point, the Toa represent very simple elements: the air, fire, water, earth, stone, ice. But
yeah.
But it's at this point that they're faced with the Bohrok-Kal, which have much more stuff. This is kind of where I'm like, when they were writing the story, I'm like, they just decided to give the bad guys all the really good ones, because they give the Bohrok powers of gravity control, sonic vibrations, plasma energy, electricity. What was the other ones? Vacuum, being able to create vacuum spaces, and what was Bohrok's? I think it was, disintegration, or something like that. It's like, these are all like really crazy good powers, and the Toa are just like, cool, we have to fight against that, and we don't have our elemental powers. Great. And they're still having to go around and try and find all these different masks and stuff. So as they go out throughout the island, they're meeting up and they're getting into little skirmishes. One of the most really cool moments in this comes when Toatahu Nuva shows up with an army of 1,000 Tanakh Bohrok just following him in line. And he is like, hey, it was Bohrok-Kal, which is the gravity controlling one. He's like, Bohrok-Kal, I'm here today as the ultimate Chad to challenge you and throw down. You cannot defeat me in my might. And Bohrok-Kal is like, up. And it's like, up what? All the Bohrok just kind of, just go. They just go. They just go up. They just go up. And he's like, all right, down. And everything gets flattened down. Like, the Toa, he's like, immediately, he's like, okay, Mask of Shielding, go. And he's like, Mask of Shielding's great. Doesn't protect you against gravity, dum-dum. So he's just getting flattened and indented into the dirt. And Bohrok-Kal is just like, hey, I see, now I've got a moment of your time here. I'd like to ask you if you've heard the good word about the Bohrok queens and where I can find them. And Toatahu is like, you'll never find them, and I'll kick your ass in just a second. And he's like, okay, well, you need to have more of a nap time. So into the dirt you go. And just kind of compresses into the dirt a little more and then goes up. Toatahu Nuva wakes up and is like, what was that? And I mean, this is just continued over and over again. The Toa keep fighting them in these 1v1s or 2v1s, or they'll try and sneak attack. Toa Liwa Nuva at one point is in the jungle, and he does the same thing. He tries to sneak up on Bohrok-Kal, I think it is, the Bohrok-Kal of Sonics, and goes to try and fly in and just swoop in and take the Krana, and he does. Or no, he goes in and he goes with all these other Matoran on the Gukko Force and stuff to try and help him, because he's like, oh well, if we Zerg rush them, they can't stop all of us. Fun fact, they absolutely can. And he just sonic waves and just vibrates his Toa brain until he passes out and stays that way, and eventually he gets back up and he's like, okay, whatever. This is so. The Toa Nuva are just getting beat the fuck out so much. There's at one point, so way back when they fought the Manus crabs, the Toa formed into a Toa Kaita. And they were like, cool, we are really strong, we can beat all sorts of cool stuff, this is great. So Toa Liwa Nuva, Gali Nuva, and Kopaka Nuva are all working together, and they run into Bohrok-Kal, Bohrok-Kal, and Galak-Kal. And they're like, we'll stop you today, villains. And so they go Toa Kaita Nuva. And it was like, okay, cool, Wairu and Nuva. This is going to be good. And so the Bohrok-Kal responded going, oh, that's pretty cool. We can do that too. And make a Bohrok-Kal Kaita. And just, boom, smack the individual Toa out of the Kaita. And they're like, what? That's a thing? We just get hit once and it's awful. And so it's loss after loss after loss. And the Toa really aren't making any progress. And now it is at this point, they're just trying to figure out what, because they're getting a few little wins and skirmishes here where like they'll be able to knock one of the Bohrok-Kal out, and it'll be great of their heads. And then like a Bohrok-Kal will run in and just slap a new one in. And it's like, even when we win, we lose. Eventually it gets to the point where the Trogg are like, hey, listen, the Bohrok-Kal have found the queens. They know where they're going. Get on it. And so all the Toa Nuva are like, okay, we haven't even found all the Nuva masks. Or I think they had at that point. Either way. In the story, they don't really use them that much. But they go, okay, well, it's now or never. They know where they are. We know where they are. So we're going to follow them. So the Toa Nuva go and they follow the Bohrok-Kal into wherever, and they find the Bohrok-Kal have gone in, and when the Toa had left the underground chamber before, all the Exo Toa were still there, and had kind of gotten into an autopilot mode to just kind of defend the whole place, and the Bohrok-Kal just kind of walked in there and immediately just destroyed them, just scrapped them all over the floor, like huge mecha suits just destroyed. And like, all right, there's the queen, guys. We've got these Nuva symbols. Let's go on up. So the Toa Nuva start. They're on like a little precipice. They're in a ledge, and they see the Bohrok-Kal starting to move in. They're like, it's too late. They're already there. There's nothing we can go. Toa Tahu Nuva goes, it's not too late yet. Takes off his mask, pulls out the Kanohi Vahi of time, which everyone goes, whoa, 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 when did you get that? What even is that? He's like, it's a Kanohi Vahi of time. Torwaga Vakama entrusted it to me and me alone, big brain boy Toa Tahu Nuva, to save the day, and puts on the mask and immediately stops. He almost stops time to a crawl, except for the other Toa Nuva. And they're sitting there and they're like, okay, cool, let's go and hit them. And they realize that they try to go and hit them, but all of this, at this point, the Bohrok-Kal are already so close to the queens. All of their Krana have turned a silver color, and a giant force field is around them. Even through almost stopped time, the Toa at this point are too late. They cannot hit them. They're in the force. They're like, okay, it's too late. There's nothing we can do. And they're still, okay, they're like, okay, well, we've got a little bit while I can kind of keep this focused. We need to come up with a plan while we have this, because otherwise we're done. Toa Gali makes a really, really interesting perception and goes, hold on. The Nuva symbols are directly tied to our elemental powers. We have to reach out to them to draw the energy from them. If that is true, can we not also draw, since we have some degree of elemental, originally we did, can we not inversely reach out to them and try and just push more power into the Nuva symbols? And everyone goes, I have no idea what you're talking about, but yeah, I guess let's try that out. So immediately, it takes out the Kanohi Vahi of time. The queens are like, all right, good, yes, good work, Bohrok-Kal, you did it. You're completing your mission now. Free us. And the Bohrok-Kal are like, just gotta put these in the queue. And the Toa Nuva reach out and just jettison elemental energy into the Nuva cubes, which just supercharge the Bohrok-Kal. Because the Bohrok-Kal, now they get all that elemental energy. And they're just, boom, just overcharging, just putting much. And the Bohrok-Kal all of a sudden get a super big ego trip. And they're like, who, man, who do you feel that? Who, do you smell that? Oh, I feel so strong. It's like, we are so strong. We don't even need the Bohrok queens. We don't even need the Bohrok. We can run the Bohrok storms by yourself. This is so cool. And at that moment, Bohrok-Kal's sonic powers just explode out of him, and he vibrates himself to dust. Oh. And they're like, oh, this is not very good at all. Because what has happened is, since they have supercharged the power, they've gone beyond the means of being able to contain them. Bohrok-Kal, who contains the power of gravity, just creates a miniature black hole and crumples himself into it, and it wipes himself out of existence. Bohrok-Kal just creates a giant electrical storm that just completely turns him to ashes. Bohrok-Kal creates a vacuum, and he just jettisons up into space. And he's never seen again. Bohrok-Kal, I think I'm trying to remember, it's Bohrok-Kal that does, whatever one does the plasma, just starts melting under its own like plasma abilities, just melting into nothing. And so there's what was it?
Disintegration?
No, there was, it's not disintegration, it's magnetism, that's what it was. It was magnetism. Bohrok-Kal's power is magnetism, and all of a sudden create such a strong magnetic force that all the destroyed exotope parts just boom come in and just from all sides and just crumple into a cube and destroy it. And the Bohrok Queens are still in the cage and everything turns out all fine. And all the Toe are like, wow, that was weird. Like, oh man, I thought something would happen. I didn't expect that. Okay. Looks big. We were the big brains after all. So they go up and they collect their Nuva cubes and they make their way back to the village. And this ends the first part of 2003, and this will lead us into the second half of 2003 since it's the first split story year. So, up until this point, one of the other big things that has happened as far as like Bionicle media and stuff, once again, in year one, we talked about they were supposed to be a PC game that was going to come out and do a lot of the story, and there was supposed to be a movie that was going to come out and tell the story. Well, the movie got canceled and the game got canceled, which is why year one was so freaking weird, story-wise. But now we're in year 3, boys. We're in the middle of the Lego financial crisis, and Bionicle, with all their Bionicle making money, is saving the company. So what do? Bam! First movie. Bionicle Mask of Light. Coming to VHS, not coming to theaters. Going straight to VHS. First Lego movie of any time, in fact.
First Lego movie?
First Lego movie. This is Bionicle, the Mask of Light. Okay. And so they would do, so anytime there was a new event or anything, they would start, on the website, they would have little campaigns like, can you figure out the whatever they want you to figure out? And they would have sweepstakes. In year one, especially, a lot of the sweepstakes were you could win a 14 karat gold or a 24 karat gold Kanohi Hao, which is the Mask of Tahu Nuva, which is, for all intent and purpose, the Kanohi Hao is considered to be the symbol of the Great Spirit Montanui. So I was like, this is really cool. And you could win, and they had a bunch of them. They had a power pack thing you could buy, which had another little Mictorin in it with another Yeet disc and a silver chromed out mask with a CD on it. It's you could go in and answer some Bionicle questions and then enter your sweepstakes entry to win a gold Kanohi Hao or other Bionicle merchandise and stuff. With the Bohrok-Kal, what they did was instead of having a sweepstakes for it, certain marked packages of the Bohrok-Kal, once they got to that point in the story where they had the silver mask, certain select canisters would carry, there was I think 3,000 were white metal masks, which is pretty much just nickel. I'm pretty sure it's just nickel. And then I think 700 would be sterling silver Krana masks.
It was actual metal.
It was actual metal, yes, for the mask. So it was okay, this is pretty cool. You could actually win this. And it wasn't even you had to enter a sweepstakes. You just had to buy the right container that had it in it, which is that's. So we get to 2003, and they start talking about okay, we're getting to the next big arc, and before we get in, so the next arc is going to be the Kanohi Mask of Light. This is another really important mask, and this will lead us to the fourth book. This is the first book written by Greg Farshti, who once again is kind of the big brain. He was the big writer, the big lead writer for the most part in Bionicle series. This is around 2003 is really where he starts coming into play and taking over writing. Kathy Hopko will no longer be writing the Bionicle books. However, she does write the movie, the movie novelization of the Mask of Light. This is an important note to make as well, that there are a total of 4 Bionicle movies. Bob Thompson, who is one of the original storyboard team members for that, he's only worked on the Mask of Light, which is the first one. Most of the Bionicle story team really only worked on the first one, and that's why the subsequent movies kind of get a little weird in how they tell some story elements. But it is important to note that even though that is the case, the movies are considered to be the canonical version of the occurrence of events, and the books, even though Greg Farshti did write books for those movies, they are considered to be just novelizations of the movie. So in all cases, the books are the canon, except for the movies, in which case the movies are the canon, and the books of the movies are just kind of novelizations, and sometimes they'll add a little bit into it, but they're not considered to be really canon. So, this is where we get into the fourth book. It was the first book written by Greg Farsi, which is Tales of the Masks. And this book is where it really feels like, up to this point, once again, that all the Turaga have kind of been keeping secrets from the Toa and not really revealing their full hand and really giving them all the help they need. They give them a little bit here and there, but for the most part, they're letting the Toa really have to struggle and fight.
It's like 15 minutes afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
So
So Tales of the Masks is a book that consists of all the Turaga sitting around the sand pit at Kini Nui, the big temple in the center of the island. And they're all trying to figure out what to do, because it is finally come to the point, they're like, that Turaga Vakama is like, and Turaga no Kama especially, are like, I think we just need to tell them everything. I think we need to tell the Toa everything that has happened up to this point, and we need to explain everything that we know. Turaga Vakama is also kind of 50-50. Turaga Vakama as a character in general is 50-50 most of the time. He's like, oh, I could do this, but I don't know if I really want to. I don't know, but and there's some reasoning in this, and we'll get to that. But immediately, Turaga Onua is like, no way, no, they are not ready. They are not ready to learn the tales of Metru Nui. They're not ready to learn anything that came before them or their predecessors. They can't barely work together. How can we expect them to trust us after we reveal all this other stuff to them? Like, how's that going to help anything? And so all the Turaga are just kind of like, yeah, this is kind of an issue. And so Turaga Onua goes, okay, just to prove my point, I will tell a tale of how the Toa can't work together. And proceeds to tell this tale about how Kopaka Nuva was trying to go through a mountain, Mount Ihu, to go and find one of the Kanohi Nuva masks. And Turaga Pohatu follows him. And through it, Kopaka Nuva continuously tells him, go home, go away, I don't want you here, I don't need friends, I don't have friends, you're not going to help me. And Pohatu Nuva is like, that's cool, bro. Remember that time we went through a mountain before, way back when? Isn't that crazy? And continues to just follow him there. This ends up creating a situation where, I believe an avalanche or something happens. Anyway, something happens to the effect where Pohatu Nuva ends up kind of sacrificing himself to save Kopaka Nuva. And, Kopaka Nuva manages to grab the mask. He makes his way back to the mountain, and it's like, crap. And there's like a Pomator, and he's like, okay, well, I got this mask. Thanks to Pohatu Nuva. Unfortunately, he didn't make it. We must remember him. We must honor him. And Pohatu Nuva ends up just running out of the snow anyway. He's like, oh, what's up, guys? And he's like, what? How did you, what? I thought you were dead. He's like, oh, yeah, I forgot. I'm the Toa that runs really fast. Because one of the interesting things, once again, is that the Kanohi Nuva masks not only are better versions of themselves, they can share the abilities of others, they exceed what you can normally think. The biggest example, Pohatu Nuva's mask. Pohatu Nuva's Kanohi Kakama Nuva does not only let you run really fast, it lets you run so fast you can accelerate your particles to pass through physical obstacles. You can phase through objects by running fast enough. And it's like, wow, that is really great. What did Gali Nuva get for her mask? Oh, she can just breathe more water, I guess. It's really, really unbalanced. It's that's the thing. Some of the masks are really unbalanced. Some of them are great. Onua Nuva, his Pakari Nuva. Now I've got the strength of like 18 Toa. I can just yeet whole boulders that are like 40 times my size made of granite. It's whatever. Super strong. Toa Tahu Nuva can create stronger force fields. Once again, it cannot protect against things that he can't see, but also doesn't protect against like the what's the word? Inertia of any incoming attack, so he will still be pushed by things, but can defend against a lot greater obstacles like lava. He can just kind of dome up and be like, lava can't hit me now. Yes, Zach.
Would this make him a good lava boarder?
Yes, it makes him the best lava boarder, in fact. His twin swords, they can slap on his feet. Now it's a lava board. That's one of the things you see in all like the promotional shots of Toa Tahu Nuva.
Remember that one time where somebody died?
Yeah. Let's do it again. I'm going to do it better. I'm going to be the best lava boarder. But anyway, so the other Troga are like, okay, but they all got the mask, and they became better friends. That's good. And Troga was like, no, you don't understand. You don't see that almost die because of their incompetence, their inability to work with each other. And so they all start taking turns telling these stories of their encounters with the Toa. Troga no Kama tells a story about how she knew where a mask was and led Gali Nuva to it, and then trapped her into a underwater stone prison thing where the mask was, and was like, I can't let you out. You got to figure out how to get the mask, dummy. And in there were scrawlings on the wall of what looked like other Toa. And it was really, really jarring, because as far as all the Toa and the Toa Nuva knew is that they were the only Toa. And the only thing they'd ever been told, for the most part, was they are the Toa. There's not like more Toa. There wasn't Toa that came before them. They are the Toa. But here they are, it's drawings of some other Toa team on some underwater cavern wall. It's weird. Anyway, she finds the Kakama Nuva, which is the one that lets you run really fast. And she can swim really fast and phases through this undersea slab underwater and stuff. And it goes on to tell more and more of the stories of that are basically just parables for the other Toa to learn to, because they all were at the time didn't have access to their elemental powers, so they were having to figure out better ways to be better fighters or better tacticians. And eventually, it leads them all to go, okay, well, Troga Vakama puts his foot down and goes, all right, I'll tell my story. And he tells this tale about how one day, Toatahu Nuva is just like, hey, has anyone seen Troga Vakama? And everyone's like, oh, no. I don't think anybody has. Anyone? Ask around everywhere. Nobody knows where Troga Vakama is. He's just gone missing. This is immediately a problem because, for all intent and purpose, Troga Vakama is the leader of the village, but he also has the disposition of a frail old man. So the Toatahu kind of gets some of the other Toa to help him. They're trying to find him. They end up in this kind of like this cave. They find out that's where he is. So they go in there, and Troga Vakama's just chilling out in this cave, hanging out. And the three of the Toa show up with Toatahu, and he's like, Troga Vakama, why are you here? Like, what are you doing? Like, he's like, oh, I'm just, hanging around. But sure would be a shame if something horrible just decided to show up all of a sudden. So the other two show up. The other Toa show up. All the Toa there with Troga Vakama. This giant monstrous beast known as the Rahi Nui appears and immediately starts talking smack to Troga Vakama. Now, the Rahi Nui is this monster that you can kind of make out of a lot of the Rahi parts from like year one set. It's got like the head of the Kane of the Muwaka, which is like it's the head of the Kane Ra, which is like the bull, with the claws of the Muwaka, which is like the tiger. And then it's got like wings from the Nui Rama, which are just like giant wasp wings, and like the feet are and the arms of a Tarakava, which are the Rock'em Sock'em lizard crocodile things, and a tail of a Nui Jaga, which is the scorpion. It looks terrible. It isn't. I mean, looking at like the actual like, who thought making this would be a good idea? This is a terrible idea. But apparently, in the Bionicle universe, it is a super, super mondo big threat. Just hiding out in a cave. Well, no one's ever mentioned before. And Troga Vakama is like, everybody needs to shut up right now. Hey, Rahi Nui, you're a bitch. and he's like, who said that? It was like, it was me, Vakama. And he was like, aw, you again. You got away from me last time, but you won't get away from me this time. He's like, oh, I don't know about that. And so all the Toa are just kind of sitting on the sidelines like, what is going on? Are we really going to let like this old man just try and fight this giant monstrous thing that he told us we are no match for? And Troga Vakama was like, shut up. I got this. Troga Vakama activates his Kanohi Huna, which is a mask of invisibility. Very interesting. And he just starts talking such mad talk to the Rahi Nui. He made it so angry. He just starts trying to smack around like, hey, it can't find him because he's invisible. He's like, hey, I'm over here. And it smacks the wall. Oh, no, I'm over here. Smacks the wall. Eventually gets its horn stuck in the wall. And at that point, he's like, all right, guys, fun's over. Time to run before he gets unstuck. And all the Toa and Turaga, they're like, okay. They're like, how did you know? I was like, hold on, Turaga. One, how did you know what that thing was? Two, how did that thing know you? Sounds like isn't the first time. And Turaga goes, time for knowing will come. And so it was at this point that, yes.
I don't know why this question popped in my head, so I'm sorry for asking it. But if they made a live-action Bionicle, obviously Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson would be in it. Which one would he play?
Oh, he would either be Pohatu or Onua. Hands down. Hands down. He would have, because once again, Pohatu Nuva and Onua Nuva, like Pomatoran and like the Onumatoran are like big Chadley dude bros that are just like, we sculpt rocks, we lift rocks. Together we are two guys who are best friends and we can lift things and run fast and be good at all physical activity.
Sounds like The Rock.
Yeah. So definitely, 100%.
Got it.
So anyway, so after this, the Turaga all kind of convene and they're like, they're going to get closer to the truth. They're going to find out the truth of everything at some point. It's only a matter of time and we just need to come out and talk to them. They go, okay, well, we've got a big Koli tournament coming up. After the tournament, we'll talk to the Toa and reveal everything. And that's where book 4, Tales of the Mask ends. And this is where the movie, The Mask of Light, begins. Well, kind of. Before that, we need to cut away because Templar Studios, has made a brand new Flash game. Matanui Online Game 2. And it's with more running around and doing and grinding and stuff than ever because this game does not have you play as Takua from the first game. As you play as a Gamatoran named Hali, who is, I guess, like a flax weaver, because I guess they need that to make nets and stuff in this fishing village or whatever. And you spend the game going around and gathering, like, seaweed and seashells and turning them into rope and nets and carving hooks and all sorts of stuff. But anyway, it released updates in, like monthly installments. And the story eventually goes that, Holly shows up and I'm trying to remember. It's Maku and some other Gamatoran whose name completely is eluding me right now. Are basically like the two best Koli players in Gakoro. And so everyone's like big. Oh man, with the Toa defeating the Bohrok-Kal, the Turaga have built this. They've got this whole new, brand new Koli stadium built. This brand new one built in Takoro. There's going to be huge Koli tournament there. So all the villagers need to start getting together and get their players. It's definitely going to be you guys, Maku and Gamatoran, whose name's eluding me right now. And you kind of just do your thing, running around and just doing chores and stuff for the other villagers. And eventually Turaga no Kama comes back because she had been convening with the other Turaga. Comes back and says, all right, guys, we're going to be having a big old Koli tournament soon. Isn't that cool? And everyone's like, yes, it is. She's like, all right, so the people we're going to have going for this Koli tournament are Maku, number 1 top star ace Koli athlete of Gakoro. And everyone's like, big brain move. And they're like, and Holly, who's never played Koli ever. And everyone's like, anyone know what he's going to say anything? They're like, okay. I mean, dude, you're the Turaga. You have to make the decisions here, I guess.
They're playing against each other? Or
no, so they're going to be playing together. It's 2-man teams. Or in this case, 2 Robo-Woman team against all the other 2-men teams. Because they're the only female ones. And so you're immediately like, hey, Turaga Nakama, why did you pick me? And Turaga Nakama goes, I don't know. Just felt like it.
Good game, bro.
What do you mean? Just do it. Like, I foresaw it or something. I don't know.
Just time for knowing will come.
Yeah, time for knowing will come. Exactly. And so you end up going and you have to start, it is in how Matanui Online Game 1 was a game where all the villagers were just constantly being ravaged by these horrible things happening and you had to kind of help solve them. Matanui Online Game 2 is mostly just get to check out all the other villages and the places in between and run, because it's a flash game, so you have to run all over the place. You run all the way. You go and you play all the Koli games. You defeat all the teams, and you make your way at the end to Takoro, where the championship will be between Takoro, Gakoro, and number one best Koli team, best athlete boys of Pokoro, Huki and Hafu. Objectively, the most best athletic, best sports guy Matorans, period. So, my money's on them. On Takoro's team, we have Takua, the character you play as in the first Matsuri Online game, and Jala, who still has the ER. We still have the hard R added on there after they changed his name, who is the Takoro guard. And they will be working as a team. Takua is still working as a chronicler, which will lead directly into the beginning of the Mask of Light, which starts with Takua kind of walking around like these lava falls, and he's just like, oh man, I'm just doing chronicler business, not having to do actual work, because being a chronicler just means I get to go anywhere and do whatever I want. This is the best job because it's not a job and I just get to do whatever. And he sees like this giant, like this stone, this like Indiana Jones stone, cylinder across these lava flows, and he's like, oh, I bet nobody's ever chronicled that. Direct words. And so he immediately starts hopping across some rocks, trying to make his way over the lava. Jala comes up and he's like, Takua, where are you? And he's like, oh, I'm just, doing this thing. He's like, did you forget about the game, Koli head? We got the Koli game to go to. And Takua's like, okay, well, first just let me get this rock and it'll be cool. And he does like this series of acrobatic flips and jumps and makes his way over to where this rock thing is. And he's like, all right. I was like, okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So Takua goes, great, I have it. All of a sudden, a little eruption happens, and he loses his footing and drops the rock into the lava. Oh, that's not good. And he's like, all right, well, that sucks, Takua, but it's time to go do the Koli match. And he's like, all right, I guess all of a sudden, a shining golden mask just pops up out of the lava, just emitting rays of light, like just super, super bright. And they're like, what is that? That's not a great mask I've ever seen. He's like, okay, grab it. And he's like, okay, I got it. And he's like, Takua, quick, hurry. Like, there's going to be a lava flow here. You need to get going. He's like, all right, I'm going to go. And he tries to, hop across and throws down a shield to kind of like make down his way across the lava a little bit. And then it's very apparent that he's just stuck in the middle of this giant like lava gorge. And here's this wave of lava that is just erupting. It's coming pouring at him. And he's like, oh no, this is bad. Tahu Nuva zooms in on his sick lava board. It is like, sightseeing enough for you, chronicler? Let's take a closer look at those falls. And they just boom off the edge where there's like a lava waterfall. And Totaku does like this series of flips and digs his sword into the sides of the cliffside and just is like, all right, this close enough of a look for you? And he's like, oh yeah, watch out for the lava that's about to fall on our heads, dummy. And Totaku is like, idiot, I have a great Kanohi How Nuva force field time. Lava doesn't do nothing. And so he's like, okay, cool. He's like, all right, let's go. So they scale back up, and he's like, what are you doing over here? Don't you know there's the Koli game that you're playing in, Takua, that you've got to win for Takoro because we're the best? And he's like, yeah. So here's the thing. I found this really cool. He's like, whoa, is that a great Kanohi mask? He's like, yeah, it is. He's like, okay, cool. Go bring this directly to Taragavakama after you win the Koli match. Koli sport is the only important thing here. Plot? No. New math? No. Koli is the only thing that matters to me. Tahu Nuva. So he goes, okay. So they make their way out. The Taraga meet up because they're going to spectate, and the Toa show up. And it is at this point that the Toa have kind of just been once again doing their own thing for a bit. Pohatu Nuva shows up and he's like, hey! He's like, it's the boys! What's up? And Tahu is like, what's going on, man? He's like, let's get some good games. Toa Gali Nuva comes up and she's like, oh, what's going on? And Pohatu Nuva is like, sister, you're here. Awesome. Great. Gonna be a good day of Koli ballin'. And Toatahu is like, maybe for you guys, we're gonna win the thing. And he's like, what is it? And he's like, oh, come on. He's like, why are you gonna be a dick? And he's like, why are you being like that, Toatahu? Like, we've gotten so many good wins. Let's just have some fun. And Golly's like, maybe he's worried that my water will put out his flame or whatever. And he's like, sister, to me, in front of my flame, your water would be nothing but steam, hot air, if you will. And so the Turaga are just like, oh man, literally nothing's changed. Like, are we really sure? It's like, oh, shut, it's all the Coley match about to start. Coley match starts. Everyone gets into their thing. The ring is set up in like a Coliseum setup. We've got a lot of the Matorian in the background. Interesting point to make. Before this, one of the big questions is how many Matorian are living on the island of Motunui. Original details for the series want it to be like there's like 12 Matorian per village, and then their Turaga. It's very small numbers. But when they made the Coliseum like scene for Mask of Light, they filled that bitch up. And so then they kind of like were like, okay, well, since we had to add so many in there, like, we're just going to say there's like 1,000 per village now. So that was like a weird retcon thing they added in there. And so the game begins. The way Coley works in this is that you have one person that has basically like a lacrosse net with a giant hammer on the other side. And you have one person who is essentially a forward, and you have one person who is a goalie. And it's just the two. The person on the goalie has a shield and a net catcher thing as well. Immediately, they start getting into it. Pokoro scores, Takoro scores, Gakoro scores, and Jella and Holly have this weird interaction where it's like she makes this huge, like, just slams the ball in. He's like, nice job for Gamatorin. She's like, I'll see you later. And it's like, okay, this is kind of weird, but whatever. So the match continues and more stuff happens. It's the final like minutes of the game. And everything is coming down to this last shot. Jala is like, Takua, use your secret move. And he's like, I got it. Takua goes out. The ball goes up. He goes to jump, somersault, catch it in like the net side of the Coley stick, and yeets it with all his force and hits almost the Turaga. Just completely throws it up into the stands, almost hits the Turaga, like leaves a dent in the wall, and he was like, oh, that's bad. The ball gets put back into play, and he tries to get it, just kind of trips, and he just kind of gets trampled. And then Gakuro gets the ball and scores the last goal and wins the game. Gakuro wins. Pohatu and Gali are like, good game, that was awesome, that's great. Toatahu is like, no fist bumps for me. I'm super salt. It is at this point that all the Matorian, they all kind of line up and they're like, okay, well, thank you for playing our great, Matorian athletes. Take a bow. And Takua has like this satchel with him that he's carrying. It's got the Mask of Light in it. Takes a bow. The Mask of Light falls out. And everyone's like, what is that? Because there's a giant like light rays just shooting up out of nowhere. And they're like, it's a great Kanohi mask. And Takua is already like, oh man, like I already messed this up so bad. I don't need any more attention on me. So he takes the mask and he kind of like starts to angle it with his foot to make the beam like start pointing on Jala. And they're like, oh, it's pointing at Jala. So then they cuts and where Turaga no Kama with her Mask of Translation is reading the Great Kanohi Mask. And everyone's just kind of standing around like, oh, what does it say? And they're like, I don't know. I don't have a mask that translates things. Wait for the Turaga. And so Turaga no Kama comes up and goes, this is the Great Kanohi Mask of Light. And they're like, well, who's going to wear it? And they're like, the Kanohi Mask of Light brings the heralding of a seventh Toa of Light that will finally defeat Makuta and awaken Motunui. And everyone's like, whoa, this is a big deal. This is really great. So Tota's like, yeah, great. When does he get here? When does this Toa of Light get? And Turaga no Kama is like, the Toa of Light will not just appear. The Toa of Light must be found. Whatever that means. And so they're like, okay. Well, we've got to go find this Toa. He's like, all right, well, who should go and find. And Toatahu has big brain moment and goes, wait! In the Colosseum, the mask, when it was on the ground, shone its light on one Matoran more than any other, and that Matoran was Jala. And everyone's like, oh, he's right! And Jala's like, no, it was Takua. He found the mask. He's the chronicler. He should be the... And he's like, okay, hold on. Takua found the mask. He should be the one to do it. He's the chronicler. And they're like, what say you, chronicler? And Takua, who hates any form of responsibility, goes, you know what? I do have something to say. I say, hail Jala, all hail Jala, herald of the seventh Toa. And everyone goes, hail Jala. And it's like, yeah, he's like, all right, I'm going to bounce. And so he goes, Captain of the Guard, Jala, will you accept this quest? And he goes, yes, I will. And Takua here has volunteered to join me. Takua's like, damn it. And he's like, I'm not letting you out of this. And so they're like, all right, well, get on going. And they're like, okay, well, how do we find this? I was like, I don't know, just angle the mask and wherever the light points, I guess, go that way. And they're like, okay, sounds good. So they start going off and doing it. Also, it is at this point we were introduced really to Takua's pet from the first game, Puku, who's a giant Usul crab. They made Puku like 2 times as large so that like both of the Matoran can now sit on her. And they gave her a weird dog tongue. Because now it's like a dog crab. But she doesn't walk sideways. Like in Montague Online game, since it was a crab, you would ride sideways. Now it just rides forward. Because crabs walk forward. It's weird. It has this weird mechanical dog tongue and it acts like it's really weird. It's so weird. And so they immediately start heading off to the jungles of Lake Horo. Pohatu Nuva, Gali Nuva, and Tahu Nuva are like, wow, this is big stuff. A 7th Toa. This is some really cool stuff. And so Toa Nuva Gali has already left at this point. She's gone to the Great Temple in Kininui to kind of like contemplate and meditate on all of this. And Pohatu is like, oh, this is pretty great. He's like, will you stay and, kind of get into celebrations at, Takoro for the Koli Pyramid? And Pohatu was like, no, I travel south. I've got to go and spread word of the, and Tota's like, you travel with Gali? And he's like, no, she went to the temple to meditate. She's gone to ponder the great thoughts. Which Bionicle is filled with nothing but great thoughts. And Pohatu was like, no, I'm going to go and spread the word to the other villages because I can run really fast, remember? So I'm the best to go and spread the word. And so off he goes. As this is happening, Gali Nuva is, contemplating at the temple in Kininui. And Makuta has finally decided to kind of just get up and do stuff finally. And he's like, they found a mask of light. That's not good. That's not good for me. I don't like this. I've got it. You know what? I got just the idea. So he digs into his own body and pulls out like these giant centipede worm things. These are known as Krata. We learn later that Krata are actually the kind of insectoid things that are responsible for infecting all the masks at the very beginning, because they have the ability to infect masks and make them under Makuta's influence. And he just has these giant vials on the wall of like these weird robot suits. And this is where we are introduced to the rock shoot, which were super cool. They're super cool. This is for the back half of 2003, they were introduced with this. Rock shoot designs started a big turning point for the designs of how Bionicle models we built. Up until then, we mostly had where like the leg pieces are all one unit, the arm pieces are all one unit. This is where we get bendable knees. So now we can actually pose them a little better instead of having like these. It kind of looks should be a knee there, but doesn't really bend. And once again, gear functions so you can hack and slash away. Yeah!
Mechanical a lot.
Pretty much.
That's what I was thinking.
Yes, very similar. And in the compartment here would be where the Krata go. And so he sends the first 3 Krata, which are Lirok, which is his one. His staff has the ability to poison things. The green ones always get poison stuff. sends, yes, Zach.
We're right about the halfway point. If you want to take a quick intermission.
Yeah, give me just a second.
Yep.
So with that, and then brings what is it? Bohrok, which is the water one, has a staff that allows it to disintegrate things, and I think it's Bohrok or Bohrok, I don't know, whatever. The brown one, which can create bombs in surfaces wherever it stabs its staff, it'll create like a miniature bomb that will explode, and sends them out to go to Takoro to get the Mask of Light. They also have this thing where they can like fold up together and have like this aerial hover mode where they put their legs together and their staff and just woo. And so Gali Nuva looks up and sees them flying that way and goes, "Oh hell no!" And starts making a run for it and gets to Takoro. And so this is immediately where things start to get weird. We'll go ahead and take a break here. Okay, so back from break and continue on with the story of Mask of Light. Talking back on it, this is the first Bionicle movie, first Lego movie of all time, which also has a little bit of contention within Lego fan groups, because as we know, the Lego movie came out and made like $1 gazillion for Lego, and they didn't put a single freaking Bionicle reference in there. Even in like storyboarding things later.
I was about that.
Exactly. In storyboarding things later, we found out that they had what seemed to be cut drafts for a Bionicle cameo, and it was like, so a lot of Bionicle fans feel, one, very abandoned by Lego already, because like they gave us the run with Bionicle to begin with in Generation 1, then they went to Hero Factory, which was like subpar, lesser Autismo Bionicle, and then when they said that was done, they did a Bionicle Generation 2 and did that for like 2 years only and went, I'm not gonna try on this anymore.
It is all the different Power Rangers.
Yeah, it really is!
Galaxy.
It really is. And Bionicle gets very like power. That's the thing. That's why I love Bionicle so much, because it takes so many of the things that I love together. It takes like that Power Ranger action team thing, and you get like the combining to make bigger things, and then you've got to have different threats, and everyone has their own power, and then the villains are just as interesting to go with, and then there's suddenly a whole new opposite force that are all identically colored to all the heroes, and they do the thing, and then we get like the next season of everything going on. But that being said, like, well, there are 4 Bionicle movies. Bionicle Mask of Light is the one that most people remember. One, because it's the first one, and 2, it's arguably the best one. And I think just from when it came out, from the hype that it had surrounding it within the story, the community was still really involved in 2003. So everyone was pretty on board, and the story was decent for the most part. Even like the actual CGI for the movie for 2003, it looks pretty decent. Like you watch it today, and you're like, wow, like this still kind of vaguely, I could see how this holds up a little bit. Like it's not like you're trying to go back and watch like very early 3D CG stuff like Beast Wars or Reboot, and like where you get like weird and you're like, oh, this is kind of like I like the idea of this, but this is kind of ugly. So you do get a little bit, but it seems very interesting. Anyway, so Toa Gali Nuva appears back at Takoro. A guard is like, Toa Gali, a toe of water is on the way. She is at the gate, and she jumps on top of the gate and she goes, she's here. We got problems, guys. So the Takoro like, what do you mean we got problems? And in come these 3 rocks. She just, boom, just laying down, and they just start going at it, start disintegrating houses and blowing up stuff, and so so right now we have Toa Tahu Nuva, Pohatu Nuva, and Gali Nuva. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Pohatu Nuva has already left. He's gone to go travel and carry word. But Tahu Nuva and Gali Nuva are there, and they're like, okay, you know what? And we got to go figure, where are the Turaga? Turn around. Turaga Vakama is just smacking one of them on the head with his fire staff. He's like, get out of here. Just smack. And they're like, oh, that's not good. So they get it's like, don't worry, respected elder. I'll take care of this. Toa throws this magma swords into the ground and tries to shoot up some lava. And the Rakshi's kind of like completely unfazed by this. He's like, okay. A big note to make about the Rakshi. Their armor colors are entirely dependent on the color of the Krata inside of them. With that being said as well, the individual powers of the Rakshi, because the Rakshi are essentially just suits of armor that have like a little slug brain, and the slug brain is what controls actually what powers it has, that it transmits through the armor.
And you can collect all the bug brains.
Oh, not only can you collect all the bug brains, because here's what they did. They went, okay, year one, got masks. How many masks you say? Well, you got 6 for each Toa, so that's 36. And then there's a special subset of silver and gold ones. So that's 8 times 6 is 48. 48 masks you can collect. Not including the masks that you can get from which when they released the Turaga as well, they were like, hey, guess what? They all get masks too. So now you can get all the different Turaga masks. And then they were like, okay, there are also masks that are unique to the Rahi, so you kind of probably should want to collect those too. Yes, Jason.
There's also like gray versions of the mask.
Correct. There was like the silver version there, and then when they did the
gray, not silver. There's both, I thought.
No, it's silver. There is a gray version of some of the masks, but they come in like Rahi sets or like combiner sets, or like bigger Titan sets. Because when they did the Nuva masks, they went, okay, well, we'll do the same thing we did before, but it's just the Nuva masks. And now we'll just do a silver set to represent like when they've lost their elemental powers because they're silver. And they also did this. Remember the Bohrok? They did they had 48 of the Bohrok ones, 48 of the Bohrok-Kal. They said that's all pussy numbers. We need to get those up. And so they went, all right. Hear me out. There are 7 stages of Krata.
Jesus.
Each stage looks different, but we're only talking about 6 for right now. The 7th one will come later. There are 36 different type of abilities Rakshi can have. Quick, what's 36 times 6? Whatever that number is, it gets into 200s. They're like, that's how many Krana you can collect. Have fun. Yes, Chris.
This is just a big Lego pyramid scheme.
Oh, yes. It was the biggest. It was. You know what? If ever there was to be a pyramid scheme, I hope it would be from a building block company. I feel like that. No, I mean they were
right where it should be.
I mean they were absolutely just previous 2 decades old loot boxes. That's all they were. Because once again, at this point they did them in these little tubs, and there would be like 3 for $4, please. And the masks, they would be like, okay, half the pack is going to be masks, the other half is going to be Krana or whatever. So, getting into a crazy amount of things you have to collect. This does not include other promotional things. Like, they had some Nike Airs you could get. They came with translucent orange Krata in the shoes as like a cool Lego shoe design. They had like Legos yes.
So these are all randomized too. You can't actually.
No, they're all randomized. They are all randomized.
Fuck that.
So you ended up with multiples before you.
Oh, you're absolutely ending up with them,
Oh, yeah.
and hoping you can trade with friends. Maybe if you have friends that are into Bionicle.
If you like Bionicles, you don't have friends.
Oh, I mean, you either have no friends or all the friends. It's one or the other. Because you either have a lot of friends that got swindled into it as well, or you're just suffering alone.
It varies by state.
It varies by state. And also at this time to mention, as far as we're talking about other Bionicle merchandise, they made things like Lego watches, Lego alarm clocks, you could get keychains, you could get some other sick Nike shoes with the masks that they looked like giant Crocs. If Crocs and like Nike shoes just had a baby, because they were just clip-on masks, with big old things, of like the Toa Nuva masks that you could take off and change with other ones.
Oh god, I remember that.
Yeah, they look. Oh, dude, I want those. I want those Toa.
They had like swimwear and
yeah, that's what it's great. They had so much stuff in Legoland. It was Legoland California, and that eventually had a Legoland down in Orlando. They had a huge Bionicle like statues and stuff you could check out, and it's crazy.
I'm pretty sure that some of that stuff is still on the beach.
Maybe.
Totamu's still at whatever the Disney downtown is called now.
Yeah, I think they moved. I don't know. It's weird. It's crazy. So we like Bionicle in 2003 was really swinging their dick around. They were really being like, Lego, we have saved you. Let's make all the money. Not to mention we just have a whole bunch of loot box shit. So anyway, So the Toa start fighting off the rock sheet, and Toa goes and jumps onto the what is it? Lerock, the poison one, grabs the staff, and they're like struggling, and Toa is like, okay, I'm gonna hit one of you with the water. Let's hear. I hope I hit the right one. Shoots a water blast, but Lerock kind of like throws Toa throws Lerock off, and he gets the full hit of the water hit instead. So he's like immediately he's like, what are you doing? I'm the wrong person. Also, Toa has this nice little slice where his mask is that has been poisoned by Lerock's staff. The rock sheet eventually, after just completely they're just dominating, and the Toa and the Troga go, we don't have any option. We have to evacuate. We have to leave Takoro. So the Troga, all the Matoran, just leave Takoro. And once again, Takoro was built like in the center of this giant lava flow on this like floating rock piece thing that was connected by land bridge. And it has just been destroyed.
How many times have they rebuilt this?
Takoro has never had to be rebuilt. It was Lake Koro, the jungle place, that always got fucked up.
Okay.
And Kokoro at one point.
I thought they
But
got-
Lake Koro,
Bohrok-Kals were like destroying.
Yeah.
they were like destroying things like in the terrain as well, but they had a lot of trouble actually getting to the villages because it was just so expansive. And the Toa were able to stop most of the damages to the villages by the Bohrok, except for Pokoro, which suffered some damage but recovered pretty quick. Gakoro, which had some good damages but recovered as well pretty quick. And Lake Koro, which was just completely wiped. I mean, it was, even by the time of the Bohrok-Kal, and at the end of it, when there was, the Lake Koro was still recovering and rebuilding. So, speaking of Lake Koro, now that that Takoro is gone, the Toa, and they're like, this was my home. They've destroyed everything. Toa was like, oh, they haven't destroyed everything. We need to find this Toa of Light. And then immediately kind of clicks because they were like, why didn't they actually stay to fight us and destroy us? They're pawns at Makuta. We should be a big threat. Why didn't they go after us or the Troga? And they're going after the Mask of Light. Crap. We got to go and figure out how we can go and stop them. So, cut to Lake Koro, in the jungles of Lake Koro, where Takua and Jala are sitting on their weird dog crab, riding and all they're doing is like, oh man, I hate jungles so much. Jungles are awful. And it's like, oh, Takua, I thought you liked traveling everywhere. He's like, it's not jungles. I hate it's all swampy. I'd rather just be with fire and stuff. Just regular grass. All of a sudden, a giant ash bear shows up and is like, ooga booga. So it is at this point that they're like, oh no, we're gonna die. Toa Liwa Nuva swoops down, pulls on a vine, and just like snares the ash bear and strings it up on its leg. And it's flailing around. And they're like, Toa Liwa. He's like, ooh! And also as a note, from here on they would always just make all the lay Matoran or the lay like Toa or anything, they would just make them have Irish accents. For whatever reason. It's like Irish accents for you guys. And so it's like, Matoran, a chronicler, what are you doing here? And it's like, we're just Mask of Light. He's like, I never heard no Mask of Light. And it's like, okay, well, we got a Mask of Light here. And then Jala just goes and pulls out a knife and is like, well, we caught this bear. Guess we gotta take care of it. He's gonna go over there and gut this bear. And Jolly was like, whoa, slow down there, boy. Oh. He's like, Ash Bear just protected her home, same as you. And then they're like, yeah, this got weird. Okay. And so he lets the bear go, and so they're like, all right, well, I guess he's like, we gotta get going. And then all of a sudden you start hearing drum beats, because remember the Lay Matoran can like communicate through drums. They do drum speak and shit. And all of a sudden, Toa Liwa was like, oh, the drums of Lake Koro bring a sorry bad tale. Takoro has fallen, and they're like, oh no, that's our home. What happened is like, I don't know. All they say is Rakshi, and then Takua and Jala are like, no, we have to go back. We have to go back to our home. That's where we need to go back. And there he's like, no. He's like, your mission is to find the seventh Toa. Ours is to stop the Rakshi. I promise you, after we get you where we need to, I will go and meet up with the other Toa. Like, heart promise. Because once again, the Lamatoran and everything, they're all dirty jungle hippies, and they just use made-up pigeon language for a lot of stuff. And so, Toliwa ends up is like, all right, well, I'll accompany you on your journey. And there's like, all right, cool. This is great. It's really reassuring having a Toa walk with us. He's like, walk? Phew, never. I only wind fly. And it's like, well, that's convenient for you because you can do that. Just jumps up into the air, throws out his air katanas, and just starts flying off and summons some Gecko birds to come and pick up Takua and Jala, and not Puku. You get to stay in the jungle, dog crab. And they just fly away. So they make it to, they get out of the jungles of Lake Horo and get to the icy wastes of Kokora, where, Toa Liwanu was like, all right, as far as I can take you, I'm going to go meet up with the other Toa and see what we can do. And so, the movie mostly is all about just what the Matoran are doing for the most part, whereas the comics at this time take more of an approach on what the Toa and the Turaga are doing. Because while they're doing that, the Toa and Turaga are trying to figure out where these Rakshi came from. And in the comics, they explain things like, okay, so the Rakshi are controlled by these things called Krata, and they are the ones who can infect masks. Now, it is at this point that they introduced in the comics and the idea of the Shadow Krata, which are just purple-colored Krata. Shadow Krata are considered to be the 7th form of the Krata, but they still can take the appearance, as far as like the actual like mold, of any of the other 6 stages. So now there's just 6 more Krata to get. Which you can only get in specifically marked packages of Rakshi, which you can only get at Target. So they're like, hey, I know you might have just bought these Rakshi 2 months ago when they came out, but now we're doing a second wave of them with exclusive pieces in them. So have fun collecting those, guys.
Lord.
All right, we get to do this again. This becomes a really annoying reoccurring thing the Bionicle does in this for the next like year or 2 or 3, where they'll release a version of like whatever the new wave is, and then like 2 months or a month later release a version with exclusive like insert package things, and then they'll start doing like only find these ones here at specific retailers. This is where we'll start seeing more of those in the upcoming sets. But in the meantime, so the Toa are just, they're going around, they're fighting some Rakshi here, and they're just trying to collect Krata. They find out that the Turaga actually have like a giant cave where they just keep a bunch of Krata that they found over the years, and they just hide them away in there, and they're like, no, we need to store them away in like stasis vials, and it's terrible. And they're like, oh my god, like, what? You know what Rakshi are, you know what these Krata are, you have a tomb of them. You have so many of them. He's like, you didn't think to tell any of this. Like, this is a huge issue. This could be. And they're like, well, time for knowing will come. And it's just like, oh my god. Also, turns out as the Toa start fighting the Rakshi here and there, the Rakshi can also merge together and form Rakshi Kaida. But the Toa end up actually having a lot more actual luck in fighting them than before. But it is even so much that there's one point where Kopaka Nuva gets ganged up by 4 Rakshi, and he's just it's just bad. But anyways, the other Toa come in, and a lot of the instances are that they more or less just chase the Rakshi off, or they just leave of their own accord. The Toa have this huge track record of this point of not actually really winning a whole lot of battles. It's just their opponents just they just I'm bored here, I'm going home, or I'm going to go somewhere else. And the Toa are we win by default. So as Takua and Jala are wandering these Iceland wastes, they are just, pointing this light from this mask wherever they can go, and they're like, okay, it's over here this way, and all of a sudden they bump into something hard. Ah, it's a Bohrok. Okay, it's actually just a frozen Bohrok. It's this completely frozen Bohrok, and they're like, oh, where did this come from? Kopaka Nuva is just standing right next to it. He's like, oh, why were you following me? And they're like, oh, we weren't following you. You were following us. He's like, nuh-uh. He's like, whatever. He's like, and they're like, oh, cool. Well, hey, Kopaka Nuva, thanks while you're here. While you're we're going to tell you all about this stuff that happened. We were digging in a cave, and Taku found this mask of light. He's like, shh. And they're like, what? He's like, shut up. Because once again, the Komatorn and Kopaka and everything, they just don't like a lot of loud noises. They don't like talking to people. But he's also listening because on the way, all of a sudden comes an avalanche! And so Kopaka Nuva just is like, all right, boys, we got to go right down this mountain. Throws down his shield, puts the two Matoran on it, and they just go snow sledding down. And he slaps on his sweet double icicle blade into a pair of ice skates that just work like skis, even though they're skates, but they work like skis, I guess, for the purpose. And so they're just going down the mountain or whatever, and they realize that the thing that has started this avalanche are, you guessed it, Rakshi coming down and following after them. And so Takua and Jala are just, they're making headway there. Kopaka has decided he's going to try and kind of sneak attack, head him off or something. And he does like a series of flips, and the avalanche comes, and he just kind of eats shit and face plants in the snow. Oh. And then the Rakshi just zoom past him because they are chasing Takua and Jala. And I'm trying to remember who it was. One of them gets on the shield, and the other one falls off. But the shield comes skids over some a partially frozen lake, so it's water, and so he's like, oh, I'm on this. So he starts using the mask as a little oar to try and get across. And as the Rakshi are about to descend on him, Kopaka Nuva just stands up, does this swirl of his double ice blade, stabs it into the lake, and instantly freezes the Rakshi. Just instantly freezes them. And they just fall in and just get frozen and die. And it's like, okay, great. He's like, wow, thanks for the help. He's like, all right, that's great. I gotta go. Sounds like my village got destroyed. Yeah, the Rakshi have now destroyed 2 villages and have destroyed Kokoro in its entirety. It's just completely destroyed because they were searching for the Master of Light. This leads Takua and Jala to start wandering through a series of subterranean caves because they're heading to Onukoro, where the mask is pointing them. It is out here at one point that they get split off, and Takua is by himself. By the way, right before this, they meet back up with Puku, the dog crab, which apparently had just walked this entire way and met up with them at the mine. They're like, great, you're back. All right, let's continue on. So they're kind of just walking around, and Takua gets kind of sectioned off. He gets lost in his tunnel. And all of a sudden, a dark shadow appears in the wall and starts going, Takua, my man, my dude, my guy, my bro. Listen, it's me, Makuta. And he's like, oh, Makuta, you were defeated. He's like, yeah. No, I wasn't, but it's whatever. I'm here now. You have no business trying to go on this journey and stuff. You're just a Matoran. He's like, listen, it's dangerous. There's some dangerous stuff out there. Give the Mask of Light to me, and all this goes away. Everything's fine. If you continue on this, your friend Jala will die, and it will be all your fault. And he's like, oh, I'm not afraid of you. And he's like, how can you be afraid of nothing? He's like, I am nothing. I am everything and nothing. He's like, I tried to give you a chance. And just kind of goes out. And because then Jala comes around with the mask and is shining like a giant light. He's like, Takua, there you are. I was wondering where you are. He's like, oh, yeah, listen, Jala, I don't think I can do this. I think I gotta go. And he's like, what? He's like, yeah, no, I just gotta go. He's like, no, this is no, it's not fair. You stuck me with your duty, and now you're just gonna bail on me? And he's like, I'm sorry, I just can't explain. So Takua goes up and he's like, you know what? Fine, whatever. I'll find the 7th Toa by myself. And Jala goes on and makes his way into Onukoro, where Pohatu has just shown up and is like, hey, Onua, brother, what's up? Best bros and friend, strong boys unite. And so they're, chit-chatting it up and, making jokes and whatever. He's like, all right. What brings you over here? Pohatu goes, I have a really important message. Up in Kokoro, they have found a great Kanohi Mask of Light, and the search for the 7th Toa is on. We're going to find the 7th Toa of Light. He's going to defeat Makuta. He's going to awaken Matanui. And everyone is like, yes, this is yes. And all of a sudden, Jala just happens to walk on up. And they're like, hey, it's Jala, Herald of the 7th Toa. And where's Takua? And Jala's just like, about that. We got separated. He's like, separated by what? He's like, by the Rakshi. And they're like, Rakshi, what's that? He's like, oh, those? Because in this time, Makuta has just taken out more chunks of himself, I guess, and made new Krata, and brought 3 new Rakshi. Rakshi was able to just make people filled with anger. Turok is able to make people filled with fear. And Bohrok, which is able to steal or sap physical strength and energy from beings. And so they show up and immediately start trying to wreck something. And Onu was like, let's give him a good old Onu Koro welcome. And so they start going into it and just fighting it. Bohrok immediately grabs Onu Anuva and just starts sapping his strength. For the record, like, Onu Anuva is the strongest of the Toa Mata. And it just completely sapping his strength. He's like, I can't even like stand up. All my power's gone. Powhatan goes to try and give a big old kick swing, and Turok just fills his, fear laser. And he just completely has like a mental lapse. And it's just like, ugh. And then, so they're like, oh no, the Rakshi are approaching. What's going to happen? Toa Tahu and Gali show up again. And they immediately come and they start helping fight out. But Tahu is kind of not looking too good. His mask got a little green glow of poison going on. He's not looking too fresh. And he's getting a little frustrated. And then all of a sudden, Kurok throws like an anger beam at him. And immediately he's like, you're like, brother, we can defeat them. And he's like, fire has no siblings. Fire is the strongest. And he starts trying to fight them. It is at this point that the Rakshi have pretty much destroyed, they're just kind of destroying Onukor or whatever, and they're figuring out whatever to do. And Onua is like, all right, screw this, cave-in time. I'm going to destroy these dudes. And it's like, just mistakenly creates like an underground quake and just collapses the majority of Onukoro. Toa Tahu is kind of freaking out, trying to fight Toa Gali Nuva until Kopaka Nuva shows up and just insta-freezes him. And they're like, we need to figure out what to do with him, especially because, as far as we know, Powhatan Nuva and Onu Anuva are dead. They're just under rubble. We don't know what's going on. We need to regroup and figure this out. So Jala has escaped and he is just walking by himself, and he's walking along the cliffside as he makes his way out. And it is at this point that he kind of falls off a ledge a little bit. And he's like thinking he's going to be falling. He sees a shadow coming up. It looks like a Rakshi. Nope, it's Takua riding on Puku. And he grabs him and he's with a stab. And he's like, I knew you'd come back. And he's like, what happened to, is that my duty? He's like, I had different things to do. I decided that this was the thing I should do. I'm sorry, no, I got those mixed up. It was Takua who was originally down there. Jala was already off walking by himself, and he's the one who said we got separated by Rakshi. And realized by all the Toa fighting the Rakshi that, you got to be there for your friends. So they decide that they're going to complete the journey together. They go off. Meanwhile, they have Toa Tahu just like chained down on that, because he's just going insane. His mind is so poisoned, he's just losing his mind. They're like, we've got to figure out. It's like, okay, well, what do we do? It's like, we got to weaken him first. So Toa Liwa grabs one of his fire swords. Toa Kopaka grabs one of his ice swords, and they just kind of cross them over Toa Tahu and just energy zap him, and they're just like zapping and filling him with energy, and he's like, ah! Because it's obviously like really painful. And like when we were watching the movie, I was like, oh man, I don't think they needed to do that much. Because they only did it for like a second, and then Gali was like, enough! You're hurting him, and it's like, that was the point. So, he's freaking out because he's in pain, and so Gali just goes, all right, I'm going to try and heal him. And so uses some of her Toa energy, her elemental energy, to summon a pool of water, and kind of like coats it down over Toa Tahu, and then drains the poison out from him through like the abrasion, and like pulls the poison out into the water, and then just dissipates the water. And then immediately collapses, because it just took a lot of energy to do that. And Kopaka's like, okay, I gotcha. And so they're like, he'll be fine. And she's like, yep, I've done all I can do. I removed the poison from him, just pulled it out through the water, so he'll be fine. So Gali goes into a literal bed of water, and is just kind of soaking in it to kind of restore the elemental power that she had used up from it. And she's talking to Kopaka. She's like, I don't know, I feel, maybe our unity isn't that great. Maybe whatever. And she's like, what do you think, Opaka? He's already gone. So he's like, oh, that doesn't make me feel good. So it was at this point that Takua and Jala are finally at the great temple in the center of the island, Kininui. And they're like, well, the Mask of Light brought us here. You know, where's it supposed to shine? He's like, I don't know. And it is at this point that all 6 Rakshi have reappeared. And they're all starting to close in until all 6 Toa show up again. They're like, oh, wow. Like, it's like, I think it starts out with, Leo shows up and creates a windstorm. They just blow a bunch of sand out. And it catches some of the Rakshi in the sand. Then, it's 3, it's Tahu, Liwa, and Gali show up first. Gali shows up to help, Tahu shows up, and immediately traps some of the Rakshi in the whirlwind, and it's made of sand. And they go, sand! He goes, plus fire, and just shoots a fireball into it. And just turns the entire thing into glass. Traps the Rakshi, some of the Rakshi in glass. Like, that's pretty cool. Because at this point that underground pops out Onua Pohatu and Kopaka. They're like, Onua Pohatu, we thought you were dead. And they're like, we probably would have been, but Kopaka went and found us and dug us out, and now we're here. Great. All the Toa surround in they weapons out, like, circle around the Matoran, and they're like, they will not get past us, because the Rakshi are kind of starting to shoot like lasers and trying to hit them, and they're like, okay, cool, shared shielding abilities, go. Shielding abilities, great. All right, now shield abilities off, let's go fight. They proceed to go and fight off the Rakshi. Everything's doing pretty well. The Toa are actually doing, working together as a group. They're combining their powers. They're really doing great. Pohatu Nuva has these little claws that he can use and yeets them at the Rakshi, and it just pins them to the rock. Everything's going great until Turok manages to get back up after being hit and goes to strike Takua. Instead of striking Takua, Jala jumps up and grabs onto his staff, and Turok just funnels fear energy through his staff, and it's so much that it literally causes him to have a heart attack. He's filled with so much fear, and immediately he just slings Jala off like he's nothing. Takua goes over to him and he's like, no. He's like, no, because immediately he's aware his friend is done. He's like, no, this wasn't supposed to happen. I'm so sorry. He's like, no. He's like, this is just how it was meant to be. You were always different, and you know who you are, Takua. You were the herald of the 7th Toa, not me. Fulfill your destiny. And Takua watches his friend die in front of him, and takes the Mask of Light, and puts the Mask of Light on, and becomes the 7th Toa of Light. What? Takua becomes the 7th Toa of Light. His Koli stick that he had with him turns into a staff of light that he immediately just points at the Rakshi, vaporizes with a light beam, points the staff at this giant rock, and carves out his own mask from before that he was wearing. It was really weird. It was like,
why not carve out your mask?
Yeah, I know, right? He's like, boom! He's defeated the Rakshi, and he goes, boom! Brings the light energy back in. That's this guy right here. Takanuva, Toa of Light. And he goes, I am Takanuva, Toa of Light, and we will awaken Matanui. All the other Toa are like, that's sick.
He looks like the White Ranger.
I know.
Yeah, this.
He is. That's the thing. Once again, it's so much Power Ranger-like. You get the super special, the 7th Toa. The Power Ranger stronger than the others because it is also explained, beings of light just do not exist in the Matoran universe. They're a Toas of light. There's never been a Toa of light before. And so this is a really big deal. There's no villagers of light. There's no Matoran. There's no Turaga of light. What's going on? So he goes and picks up Jala's body, and they go and I guess they bury it somewhere. I don't remember. They don't really. And so they're all kind of sitting around at Kininui. Takua's been working on something for a bit. He's been building Takanuva's building something. And they're like, all right, well, when do... and so Holly comes up. And Holly, from before, you played Matsuno on game 2, she's like, oh man, Takua, I'm so sorry to hear about Jala and stuff. And a lot of the Matoran, they're just kind of consoling him while he's finishing building this fucking thing. This is the Usanui, which is, in canon, made from the destroyed remains of all the rock shit. He literally just built a vehicle out of the skeletons of his enemies, which is like the most metal thing. Fun fact for it too, if it is supposed to be to build it, all these parts here are made from, or the same Lego piece as like the rock sheet pieces. And if you notice, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So haha, very cool for story convention. So he builds up this thing, and Topahatanu was like, well, that's a really small craft to fit us all on if we're going to go fight Makuta. And Takanuba goes, no, this is personal. This is, your duty is to protect Matoran. My duty is to go defeat Makuta. Yes, Jason.
What about the mask?
Okay, I'm going to get into that.
Okay.
Because it is this point that they're like, I mean, if you're sure, I mean, you are a guy who has the light powers and can vaporize stuff. I'm not one to argue with you. So Takanuba gets ready to set off, and Holly comes up with Jala's mask in hand and goes, you were Jala's chronicle. Let him be your chronicle. Let him be your herald. And puts the mask on, like, the, what's it called? What's the thing for cars? Like the little emblem piece or whatever on the front.
Head ornament?
Head ornament, yeah. He just puts his head ornament, his dead best friend, on his
just a mask.
It's just a mask, but on the vehicle he made from the destroyed skeletons of his enemies.
They're like, screw, we got so many corpses on this bike already, let's go.
Haunted bike, haunted bike, haunted bike.
Talk about Ghost Rider.
Let's go. Yeah, it's the Ghost Rider. So, Takanuba gets on the Usanui and proceeds to dive down into the Mangaya from before. He's heading down into the Makuta's lair. He's going so far deep down under the earth crush. He's going so far down, and he sees this giant stone pillar doors in front of him. They're sealed up, and he just backflips off this cool bike and destroys it. And just smashes it into the wall and breaks up the rocks and lands. And he's like, cool. Out of the bike pops Holly, who is just hiding in one of the compartments, just tumbles out, and he's like, what are you doing in there? I could have killed you. And she's like, you were always the person doing the chronicling around. Let me be your chronicler. I'll be the new chronicler person. And he's like, okay. So they start walking into the lair, and finally, in front of them is Makuta. Not in a small Matoran, piss baby form. In his full big boy form. Which we finally got a set for Makuta, which was this guy right here.
The giant.
It is a giant. He's much bigger comparatively. He's like twice the size of him. It's crazy. Makuta wears the Kanohi Krakan, the Mask of Shadow. Oh, no wonder he doesn't want someone with a Mask of Light. This is some clashing stuff here. And so, Makuta goes, all right, you're here. You made it here, bud. So we're going to do this? He's like, what's... Takanuba goes, yes. We settle this today. Holly, go get all the Matoran and the Turaga and the Toa that are just waiting up there for me. Bring them down here. Because at this point, Lake Horo is mostly still destroyed. Takoro is completely destroyed. Pokoro is somewhat destroyed. Gakoro is okay. Onukoro is completely caved in and destroyed. Most of the villages are just donezo. So they're all kind of waiting around to see what happens. He's like, bring them down here. We awaken Motunui this day. Makuta is just sitting, he's like, okay, sure, man, I mean, if you really want to. So he's got this giant hall, and he's just sitting, he waits. All of the entire, people of Island
Maybe you just have him behind him.
Rocks him. They brings him in, and they're like, all right, so here's the deal. You just brought all your friends here to watch, to see you fail. And there's no escape. And they're like, yeah, there is a big hole next to me. Nuh-uh. Makes a rock fall down and just, now it's closed off. He's like, everyone is here now. Everyone gets to watch you suffer in defeat, and I win, period. So Takanuba goes, all right. He's like, where do this? And Makuta goes, you know what? I'm a man of sport. How about we settle this in a game of Koli? Just you and me. And he goes, you're on. So they get up into the center of the room, and then this he just has this Koli ball just shoot up, and they fight for it. And Takanuva is just not doing well. I mean, it's not really like Koli to win. It's like trying to hit each other with the ball, Koli match to the death. Because these are just giant iron balls, just yeeting. So this is not going. And Takanuva is just jumping from like pillar to pillar, trying not to get it. He's like, "Oh, what's wrong, Toe of Light? I thought you were going to defeat me. Now everyone's going to get to just, you see you die. Just like your friend Jala." And he throws the ball at him, and Takanuva is just so angry. He jumps forward, and he does his super special, awesome secret move from the beginning of the movie. Somersaults in the air, catches it with a Koli Staff of Light, somersaults, and yeets it. The ball hits Makuta right in the chest, and he anime flies back into the wall, creates an impression, and falls down. And he's like, "Yeah, that's enough." And he's like, he's like, "You don't understand. My brother suffers while he wakes. Sleep is what brings him peace. My duty is to he's like, my duty is to Matanu." He's like, "No, my duty is to the Mask of Shadows." Takanuva goes, "Well, let's see what's under that mask then," and jumps onto Makuta. And they both like wrestle for a second, and they fall into a pool of energized protodermis.
Oh, Lord.
Oh no, more, yeah. So everyone's like, "Oh, are they gonna come out? Are they gonna go on? There's some weird silver water looking there." And out comes the merged being of Takanuva and Makuta, which more or less has the physical stature and structure of Makuta, with the mentality of Takanuva, who goes, "I am Takutanuva." Like, we free Matanui this day. Because there's this other gate on the side that they wanted to open up. Because he was like, after you defeat... Because originally Makuta was like, after you defeat me in Koli, if you can attempt to open this gate. So Takutanuva goes over and lifts this heavy stone gate up. And he's holding it while everyone's running past under him to get to the other side. And then Holly is running by with Jala's mask. And he's like, "Hold, little one." He's like, "This mask needs life." And transmutes some of his Toa power, or whatever power that Takutanuva has, into the mask, and just revives the whole ass Jala. Just reforms into existence with his mask. And they're like, "Oh, he's great." This has used so much energy from Takutanuva that he can no longer hold up the door. The stone door falls down and just crushes him. Out slides across the room is the Kanohi Evoki, the Mask of Light. And they're like, "All right, well, I guess we just got to keep moving forward." And the Traga are like, "Oh, no, there's no problem, with our 3 virtues." And so it is at this point, it's one of the weirdest things in the movie, and I've never found anything in any sort of like analysis for any of the series or anything that explains what happens here. The Toa Nuva all stand in a line in T-pose together. And Turaga Vakama goes, because there's this giant, the unity, duty, destiny symbol on the ground. And he goes and puts Jala on one, Holly on the other, just on this engraving on the floor, and the Mask of Light in the center. And all of a sudden, and they go, unity, duty, destiny, and Takanuva just reforms back up out of light. And he's alive again. I guess we won! Great job, boys. And so, yay! We did it. That being a note on the side, the Makuta and Takanuva, they can merge together and make Takutanuva. You would also see more. Oh, one other thing. Man, I can't believe I forgot this. Way before this. So at the end of the Bohrok-Kal saga, because this is something you'll see, I don't have some of the Matoran with me, they did a redesign on the Matoran, where they made them a lot more like, not just yeet disc, and more gear turning. Because now they have some new parts that can make better looking Matoran. And the reason they said this is that after the Toa defeated the Bohrok-Kal, the Turaga taught the Matoran how to rebuild themselves into stronger, better little versions of themselves.
That costs more
So
money.
did they-
Yes! Because how the way they did this was, so Takua came with a kit that had, him and the crab, dog crab. Jala came with one with the Gecko bird. And then you could get all the other Koli playing ones that you saw in the movie were just separate little packs that you could buy on themselves. So that was that. So in 2003, the end of 2003 was the Rakshi, the Titan. This is where we started getting the term Titans. Was the Takanuva, Nusanui, Makuta, the Jala Takua, those ones there, and then the Koli playing Matoran. And as they all walk out of this cave, they see across this giant ocean in the distance these large spires in the outline of a city. And this is where the Mask of Light ends and the saga of the island of Matanui ends. Because from here, they just go, more adventures will be had. So at the end of 2003, things are looking pretty great for Bionicle, and it all seems really wrapped up. So you go, okay, where do we go from here? I guess there's this giant city across the sea that we have to go to, so what's up with that? And so this is where the books continue on from this. This is where we get the first book in what is the new series. So the Bionicle, I think they were called Bionicle Chronicles was the original series of books. The next series of books will be called Bionicle Adventures, and these are all written by Greg Farshtey. This is where, once again, Greg Farshtey at this point is really coming into his own and being like one of the lead main writers for Bionicle. An important thing to note on this too is fan interaction with both LEGO as a group and a lot of the headlining people in the Bionicle like development series with just regular Joe Schmoes. So back in 2001, there were two main websites that you could really go to see about a lot of Bionicle stuff that weren't like the official Bionicle website. And those were BionicleZone.com and KanohiPower.com. Later in 2001, they would merge together to just create the BZ Power forums, where everyone could go and just show different Bionicles and stuff they've made together, or you could speculate on plot or whatever. But something that was really interesting is they would have Greg Farshtey would do Q&As on there all the time. So people would just mass send Greg Farshtey questions, especially about the seventh Toa and stuff. Because, once again, like before where they've done contests and sweepstakes before, this time in the search for the seventh Toa. Also, they had like a premiering on Cartoon Network at the time too. So if you didn't buy it on VHS, you could see it on Cartoon Network. They had a sweepstakes where you had to like look for different things and clues, and they would have them on the website to see where you thought the seventh Toa would appear. And if you won...
that chapter has on the whole...
yeah! So in that, they had a sweepstakes where you could win a bunch of cool stuff. But the grand prize was a solid platinum Kanohi Evoki, the Mask of Light. To this day, I believe it is still the most expensive officially licensed LEGO piece. It sold, I think the last time it sold, I think was in like 2015, I believe. And it sold for like $15,000. Because, I mean, it's a solid, like, piece of just platinum. Yeah, Jesus McCreezus. As far as I am aware of, it's only really exchanged hands, like, 3 times. But it's mostly been with the same people for the long part of it. But once again, so you would have Greg Farshtey just answering a lot of just very, like, important lore-related and, like, mundane-related questions about Bionicles. But a lot of times he would also just be like, the story team hasn't really figured this out yet. We haven't really discussed this, and you'll find out more or whatever. This is also where we start getting some Bionicle books, where we have the first one they count, which was just the official guide to Bionicle. Scholastic mostly took over as far as like bookmaking for the series, and we would get things where it was pretty much just like it would show you all the different Toa and the different masks, and when you got the Toa Nuva and give you like the Toa of Light, rumors of Toa of Light. Go over the Turaga. It would go over like the actual parts of the island of Matanui. You have some of the Matoran even, and it more or less just became like you've seen the catalogs of all the other different Bionicles, and now you can kind of just have like a thing where you can look at all more or less the box art of them, and then we'll give you some parts of the story in here so you can see how they all kind of run together and stuff. But it was really cool. It was a really neat, comprehensive little way to get a condensed version of the story this far and see what all sets had come out. And the next part that would come out is Metru. So the first book of this, City of Legend, will become the Bionicle Adventures book line. The first is the Mystery of Metru Nui. So the story picks up more or less where we've left off. It's been a few months since the defeat of Makuta. And the Turaga have told everyone that they're going to be traveling by boat. They need to build boats to go back to the city island of Metru, which, once again, everyone's like, when did this happen? Why do none of the Matoran know anything about this? Why do you keep hiding everything from us? What is going on? And so Turaga at this point is just feeling, all the Turaga are just under so much pressure. And they're like, look, we didn't think you guys were ready before because the tales of Metru Nui are dark and grim, and we didn't know how you would take them. We didn't know if you could even trust us after we've held so much information. But now with the Mask of Light in hand, we're going to awaken Metru Nui. We don't really have much choice. We're going to be going to Metru Nui because the Toa are like, if we're going to be going to this island that we know nothing about, like, we need to know something. So Turaga goes, okay, then we'll start telling the tales of Metru Nui. It's not a nice story, but we'll explain everything. In the group is all the Turaga, all the Toa. Yes, Jason.
So has the time for knowing come?
The time for knowing has finally come. We got there, boys. It only took 3 years of toy buying, defeating Makuta twice, and 2 rounds of Bohrok.
And then they all explode.
Hundreds of, yes. And so Turaga begins the tale of Metru Nui, which is an island that looks very similar in like the geographical outline of Metru Nui, but is a completely different beast. It is a dazzling metropolis. Wide skyscrapers fill the skyline. In the fields of Metru, because instead of Koros for the villages now, it's Metrus. Metrus are just cities. So you have the architectural fields of Metru, where everything for the most part is crafted out of protodermis, which we're now really getting introduced to as being the catch-all substance. Protodermis is sifted in through the Great Sea, through Gakoro. It's brought into Takoro, where they do all of the actual furnacing and smelting of it, and they make it into things like masks. They make it into these new discs. They make it into tools, where they'll just make the solid blocks of this protodermis, and they'll ship it off to Metru, where they'll carve them out into statues or make tools out of them.
I'm surprised they didn't make protodermis Play-Doh at the time.
I frickin' know! Lake Metru is created this giant hub system of aerial transport chutes that's like very similar in like Futurama, where you have like the little, you go in the tube and it goes whoop. It's like that, except a lot less glass that can break. It's like energized fields of like gaseous protodermis, I guess, that you can just travel through, and there's huge networks here. In Metru, giant crystalline ice towers made out of protodermis are where all the scholars live. In Onu Metru, it's just this vast underground labyrinth that extends out almost under the entire city of archives of all sorts of different, if anything has ever existed, one of it is probably down there. Whether they're dangerous rocky or masks or tools or any just giant archive just spiraling under. It is this just compared to like the island of Metru Nui, which is just sticks and huts. I mean, it's just such a huge change and advancement. And this was before the island of Metru Nui. So like, what the hell happened? In the city of Metru Nui, they have only one Toa. His name is Toa Lacan, and he is best boy, biggest bro, awesome guy ever. He is their sole Toa protector. And the city of Metru Nui is led by one Turaga Duma, who has installed an authoritarian state into the city island of Metru Nui.
Got a 5-minute warning.
Okay. And the way that it is mostly dealt with is by robotic,
Just
more or less. They're completely robotic. There's no like sentience to them. Whatever. They're program enforcers that just their entire job is to catch Matoran if they are not doing their jobs, or if they are running off and doing things they're not supposed to do, and find troublemakers and bring them to justice. And they're released in like squads of them. Now each of the different I just lost the name of it. Each of the different Vaki, that's what they're called. Each of the different Vaki, they're sent to different regions. They all have a different personality trait, and they all have different stats. The stats will do different things, from being able to completely disorient you, as far as like you won't be able to, like, being right becomes left becomes right, to ones where they will just make you an absolute, spy of the state and report on all of your friends and try and just like do whatever you can to bring them to the Vaki, and just it's a bad time. They've got a whole bunch of stuff, but they are just installed in every because unfortunately in the city of Metru Nui, Matoran have just started going missing. And not just a few Matoran. A whole lot of Matoran have gone missing. Not only this, Toa Lacan wasn't only Toa there. They used to have a team of Toa that have all also mysteriously gone missing and never returned. In addition to this, giant vines and have just started creeping through some of the Metrus, just wrapping like around buildings and crushing them and destroying them. And a lot of whispers are said that the vines actually are the ones that are capturing Matoran and just dragging them off. And nobody really knows what's going on. But this brings us to Toa Lacan, who is in the Great Temple in Metru, where he has created 6 new Toa stones. Which, remember from the first one, where the little stones that Takua had to grab to summon the Toa there. 6 Toa stones that he has grabbed, as well as placing a map around each one of them. He is being pursued, and he manages to escape. He travels around each of the different Metru, finding different Matoran to hand him off to. He hands one to Nokama, who is a Matoran scholar and teacher in Metru. He hands one to Nuju, who is just a Matoran who lives in Metru, who is one of the higher scholars living there. He gives one to Wenua, an archivist in Onu Metru. He gives one to Anawa, who is the greatest crafter in Po Metru. He gives one to Matau, who is more or less a test pilot for new transport devices in Lei Metru. And he finally ends up giving one to Matoran named Vakama, who is a mask maker. And he is a very competent mask maker. And Taraga Duma has given him a very important task. Matoran Vakama is tasked with creating a Kanohi Vaki Mask of Time, so that Taraga Duma will be able to help the city better, since they only have one Toa. Toa Lacan shows up and goes, "Hey Vakama, just making masks?" And he's like, "Oh, Toa Lacan, what are you doing here?" He's like, "Listen, I can't stay long. Metru Nui is in danger, and if anything happens to me, I need you to take this." He hands this package to Vakama. If anything happens to me, you need to take this. Save the heart of Metru Nui. It is at this point that 2 hulking figures come in. And those are Nadiki and Kreka. Nadiki, who looks like a giant spider demon, who will give you the clamps. And Kreka, who just is a big, dumb brute. He's big and strong. Those are his strong point. His weak point, not smart so good. And they come in, and Nadiki walks up and he goes, "Ah, brother." Toa Lacan becomes very agitated by this very quickly. He goes, "You lost the right to call me brother a long time ago." And so initially a fight ensues, and Vakama's just trying to get out of there. So he runs, but Nadiki catches up to him and captures him and holds him over a giant pot of lava and goes, "Lacan, I'm going to drop him. No issue. Just dropping him unless you decide to come with me of your own volition." And so Lacan does. Vakama goes, "Oh no, what do I do?" And he goes, "Follow the map." And we'll cover more in the next time.